Think back to September 2013. Tokyo would be hosting the Olympics, but the Games didn't happen in 2020. COVID made sure of that. A year on, the Olympics are almost here, and COVID's still the issue.
It's not normal to hold the Games during a pandemic, but that is what they're trying to do.
Dr. Omi is not alone. Polls suggest most people in Japan don't want the Games to happen now, but they're going to. The stadiums are all set. The torch relay is making its way across Japan, and athletes have started to arrive. But this will not be a normal Olympics.
There will be staggered entry and exits at all of the venues, all of the stadiums, and when they're inside, all of the spectators will have to wear masks, and they won't be allowed to shout or scream to encourage their favourite competitor or team, and they won't even be allowed to talk loudly either.
Those are some of the reasons some have described these Olympics as joyless. Well, we must wait to know if that's fair, but already we're hearing a positive message from the International Olympic Committee.
Just like the athletes who are preparing for these games with so much concentration and focus, we are also getting ready for this final sprint.
But why is this final sprint happening? Why are these games going ahead given the pandemic? Well, this is about politics and money. It's about sporting endeavour. And perhaps it's also about a desire to keep going in spite of COVID. Let's start with the money.
The International Olympic Committee's enthusiasm to go ahead with the Tokyo Games is not difficult to understand. Holding the Olympics is how the IOC makes money. Broadcast rights and sponsorship add up to around $6 billion.
The IOC argues its revenues are a global good. Its website tells us that between 2013 and 2016, it brought in $5.7 billion, and that every day the IOC distributes about $3.4 million around the world to help athletes and sporting organisations. And 73% of those IOC revenues come from broadcast rights. So if there's no sport to show, someone is going to get a bill. This article on the Nikkei website has the headline, "Japan can't call it quits if IOC says Olympics must go on." It tells us that, as things stand, Tokyo cannot get out of hosting the Games unless it's ready to shoulder hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. And if we look at the host city contract signed by the IOC, Tokyo and the Japanese Olympic Committee, in part it backs up that point. It details how the IOC can terminate the Games in certain circumstances, but not the other parties. Because of this, if Japan did cancel, it may be liable for lost revenue. But this is not as simple as the IOC forcing Tokyo to continue. The Japanese government has its own reasons for wanting to carry on. It's already spent billions preparing for the Games. It's already going to lose millions because overseas spectators can't come. Would it really want the further blow to its finances of cancelling? And it's not just about the money, it's about politics too. This is Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga. He faces an election later this year, and despite current sentiment, he may be hoping for an Olympic boost. As Professor Jack Anderson at the University of Melbourne puts it, Japan has seen economic stagnation for a long time. There's been the tsunami and the nuclear disaster of Fukushima, so the Games would be seen as symbolic of a revival of Japan. So this is about national pride, which plays into the next political factor. If these Games are in Tokyo, look where the Winter Olympics are in 2022, Beijing. Regional rivalries mean Japan really doesn't want to cancel. So that's money and politics, two reasons to go ahead. Next are the people at the heart of this, the athletes.
We've all trained hard, and it doesn't really matter whether our fans are there or not. We'll give our best, because Olympia is Olympia.
To cancel would undercut the efforts of thousands of athletes. That's another reason to go ahead. But all of these reasons come up against the biggest issue, COVID. Let me show you the key data. During the pandemic, Japan has recorded over 780,000 cases. By comparison, the UK has had over 4.5 million. There have been over 14,000 COVID deaths in Japan. In the UK, it's more than 128,000. And this is Japan's infection rate. Since mid-May, the overall trend is down. So that's better news. But there are reasons to be concerned. The first is vaccines. 90% of people in Japan have had at least one vaccine dose. In the UK, it's 64%. Also, Japan's lower number of overall cases means there's lower immunity within the population. Another issue is the daily infection rate in Tokyo. On the 21st of June, the daily average was just under 400. The head of the Tokyo Medical Association, though, says it needs to be below 100 to hold the games safely. And then, as well as that, there's the threat of new variants too. To this, the IOC and the Japanese government point to what they're doing.
It is my conviction that when people understand there are no firmer measures we could be taking to prevent the spread of coronavirus, attitudes will change to say it is okay to have the games.
Maybe they will. Public opinion in Japan is shifting, but that may be more resignation than Olympic spirit.
People are starting to accept the fact that the event will probably go ahead regardless of their opinions.
The games do look inevitable, but the question of whether this is the right thing to do remains. Other sporting events have similar considerations. This is the perspective of Dr. Andrew Murray, Chief Medical Officer for Golf's European Tour.
Sport has got an ability to inspire and provide hope, and that's what the World Health Organization and that's what the IOC and others will be looking at. They'll be looking at the risks associated with the coronavirus and the benefits associated with these events.
Well, they have looked at the risks, considered the pros and the cons, and they decided the show goes on. Or as Dick Pound, one of the most senior figures at the IOC, told the Evening Standard in May, barring Armageddon that we can't see or anticipate, these things are a go. The thing is, though, the last 18 months are full of events we didn't see and didn't anticipate. The risk is that the impact of the Tokyo Games on the pandemic will also fall into that category. We'll know soon enough.